Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to our hopefully beautiful journey into English literature. Today we move from the Augustan literature, the neoclassicism and the rules of decorum, to speak about one of the most interesting, one of the most fascinating literary movements in England, but also in Europe. But our focus is English literature, so we're going to be focusing on the romantic poets or romanticism or romantic literature in England. So far we have been speaking about poetry in so many ways. We've seen how, for example, that men dominate poetry. Not because there's something wrong with women, but because the way the society was treating men and women, we have something different here. We've seen how, for example, in the Augustan age, those people, those poets, those great poets like, Dryden, Alexander Pope, and other poets, even like Milton, how they preferred to follow a particular etiquette, a particular decorum, particular rules in order to write particular types of poetry. Before these people were preaching what is called the rules of decorum, we've seen something from Alexander Pope from his poem Essay on Criticism, how he was saying that poetry has to be methodized because these rules were discovered from nature, and that's why we have to follow them, to imitate the great ancient poets in order to produce great poetry. Only John Donne probably was writing different poetry. And we've seen how he was hated, he was negatively framed in so many ways. Now we move to a group of people who were really fed up with the classical or neoclassical Augustan way of expressing yourself as a poet. And this movement is called Romanticism, romantic literature, or romantic poetry. This is a movement that started in the late 18th century, actually beginning from the French Revolution. Remember, we said this before about the 17th, 18th century. There were like so many changes taking place. In the 18th century, in a way or another, it was called the Age of Revolutions. People wanted real change, radical change. In America, we have the American Revolution. In France, we have the French Revolution, in addition to the Industrial Revolution and the revolutions in all walks of life. But England did not like to change radically, because after the Commonwealth and the Restoration, they realized that stability is the best thing we could possibly have. However, some people said, okay, if we can't do political and social changes, real changes, at least we can do a revolution in poetry, in literature, and this is the romantic poets, basically William Wordsworth and Coleridge. So as a movement, the beginnings go to more or less, again, these dates are not clear-cut. It doesn't mean like this is the French Revolution, the next day people wake up and they find themselves writing different poetry. It's gradual, it takes time sometimes, but more or less. So after the age of revolutions was sweeping all across America and Europe, England had to do something. It didn't do it in politics. It didn't do it in other areas. It was literature. And this is how I usually focus on this, how literature changes lives, how literature changes societies, how literature makes us different people, hopefully better people, affects us, how it influences us positively, makes us... And this is true because literature addresses the heart and the mind in a way or another. When you watch, similar to watching a movie, sometimes you watch a movie and you weep, you cry, you feel sorry for something, or you decide to change something about your behavior. And this is the power of literature. So don't undermine the fact that it was only a revolution in literature in England. So we speak about the two major romantic poets, William Wordsworth and his friend, his best friend. He's also a romantic poet and critic, Samuel Coleridge. So Wordsworth and Coleridge. Together, they published a book they called the Lyrical Ballads. They called it the lyrical ballads. And they were writing totally, radically different poetry from the Augustan poetry. Remember the Age of Reason, the Rules, the satire, where poetry was basically an elite subject matter, elite, highly sophisticated language, and it's generally about the court life, about the king, the queen, battles, heroism. Here, everything changed. We'll talk about this in more details today and in the coming classes. When they published this book, many people wanted to read it, and they sold out. So they had to work on another edition, and they added a preface. You know, preface? An introduction to the second edition. And this introduction is so significant. In Arabic, we know مقدمة ابن خلدون, where the introduction could be more significant than the book itself in many ways. Here, the preface is so significant because William Wordsworth and Coleridge, together in a way or another, they defined poetry. They gave us a different definition of poetry. And they told us poetry has to be 1, 2, 3. I'll talk about this in a bit. Okay, so it was later, the same book was republished, but there was an extra preface, introduction, in which they defined poetry and they told the people what they were doing. The tenets, the fundamentals of Romanticism. Okay? Now, one significant point is the comparison between the Romantics and the Neoclassicists or the Augustans. When I say the Neoclassicists or the Augustans or the Age of Reason, think of Dryden, think of Samuel Johnson, and think of Alexander Pope. You know, the couplets, the rules of decorum, the subject matter that has to be a particular issue. Some people say the Romantics were almost the very opposite of the Augustan age. This is true, but we have to be careful. Again, this is true, but we need to be careful because we don't want to give the impression that the Romantics were writing poetry only to oppose and contrast the Augustans. No, they had their own idea of what poetry means. So, what did they change? Number one, what is poetry? In the past, poetry was following the rules of decorum to speak about an important issue in the society using important, highly sophisticated language. But now, for the Romantics, poetry is an expression of feelings. Poetry is the overflow, this is part of the definition, the overflow of emotions, of powerful emotions. It's the spontaneous overflow of powerful emotion. In a way, when you ask a Romantic poet, why do you write poetry? He's not going to tell you, I'm writing poetry to teach and delight. I'm not writing poetry to assert eternal providence and to justify the means of God to man or something. I'm not writing poetry to teach you how poetry is methodized and how poetry is discovered in nature. I'm not writing poetry to teach you that a little learning is a dangerous thing. No. I'm writing poetry to express myself. What is poetry? Self-expression. And this is beautiful and new and revolutionary and different. So why would you write poetry? I don't care in a way. It doesn't mean that they didn't care about the audience. They did. But more significant than teaching and delighting first is to express yourself as an individual. As an individual. So what is poetry? It's emotions. It's feelings. It's expressing powerful emotions and feelings. The overflow of powerful emotions. Now, what is the language of poetry?
Highly educated language.
For the Romantics? Highly sophisticated language, you know, embellished. We spoke about embellished, highly embellished language, where you sometimes, usually you need to check the dictionary to see what a particular word means.
No, the normal.
Oh, yeah. So the Romantics, for the Romantics, poetry was the common language or The language of everyday man. What does it mean, everyday man? Like the language we use normally as we speak. And not slang. General, I don't even want to say colloquial. It's poetic still, but you don't go for the difficult words. One simple thing, I use when students sometimes come to me and say, I want to write poetry. I write poetry. I want to learn how to write English poetry. I always tell them, try to read something by William Blake. Try to read these poems by William Wordsworth. Because sometimes you would read the whole poem and you don't even use the dictionary once. Because you know all the words. It doesn't mean it's very easy, very simple. No. But they don't go for the difficult expressions, for the difficult language. The language that only people who go to university understand. It's a language that, if you say it to anyone, they will understand. We'll take examples in a bit. So poetry is different. The language of poetry is different. The subject matter in the past, remember, was about heroism, about God, about Adam, about Eve, about the queen, the fairy queen, right? Yes. About Paradise Lost. So the subject matter has always been about generally courtly life. And that's why we have courtly love poetry. About the king and the queen, and even about Adam and Eve and God and the creation. Mostly issues according to the Augustine definition, like something of importance to the society as a whole. But now for the Romantics, they said, no, I can't fix the whole society. I can't make one poem change the whole society. I can't change one person at a time. I can't change an individual at a time. So the subject matter is also taken from common life. Simple and generally about ordinary people. Sometimes the people take even the title of the book, the poem. We'll find a poem called, for example, Chimney Sweeper. Lucy Gray. Who's Lucy Gray? Is she the queen? Is she a princess? She's a poor little girl. A poem called Sick Rose. We'll find a lot of nature. So basically, everything we learned about the Augustines was changed. Poetry is no longer written in order to please the king or the court or important, highly educated people. It's to please, to address, to communicate internal, powerful emotions with the masses, with the individuals. Simple language, subject matters are taken from ordinary life, from nature mainly. The Romantics were fascinated with nature. I'll come back to this many times, especially when I talk about William Wordsworth. So, the general features of the Romantic poetry, these are very significant. We have general features for the whole school, and we have each individual poet has extra particular features. We'll see William Blake in a bit. So the Romantics, number one, they use simple language. And then also simple subject matter from common life, common daily life. For example, the Sick Rose, the daffodils, Lucy Gray. Who's Lucy Gray? She's not the fairy queen. She's an ordinary little girl. The Chimney Sweeper, Little Lamb, nature, simple people. And what does this mean? When you change the language, when you break the rules of decorum, you are certainly employing new poetic forms. I always like to liken John Donne to the Romantics in the way he broke the rules, in the way he wanted to change so many things. But there are different issues. Those people were focusing more on feelings, emotions, powerful emotions, personal, individual experiences. We have this in John Donne, but not in this particular way. And those people were fascinated with nature. Fascinated with nature. So, like John Donne, the idea, the meaning is more important than the rule. And that's why we'll see new poetic forms. We'll see long lines, short lines. We'll see many extra syllables here or there if this is necessary. So, like John Donne, they would follow the rules unless the rule is hindering, is not helping the message, so they break the rule of decorum.
How the mainstream critics spoke this new form of writing?
That's a very interesting question. When John Donne was writing poetry, it was the beginning of the Renaissance, the heyday of neoclassicism. People were writing poetry imitating Horace and people in the past. And John Donne was alone. So many people criticized him. But here, this movement naturally came at the end of an era where people, in a way or another, were tired of the same poetry, were fed up with the same poetry about the same subject matters. People wanted change, wanted things to be different. And now the Romantics started doing this. So yeah, many people were like, oh wow, we like this, we want this. Especially after the giants were no longer around. Dryden was dead, Alexander Pope I think was dead, they were nowhere to be seen. So sometimes you're lucky to be born in a particular age. Okay, so important features here. And then for the Romantics, they focus on the heart, the emotions, the feelings. They care more about particular feelings rather than the mind and the intellect and the age of reason. The Augustan age is called the age of reason, where the mind is more important, more significant. The heart was dangerous. But now for the Romantics, the mind is dangerous. Meaning, feelings and imagination, the power of imagination, feelings and imagination are above reason and intellect. They were encouraging individual people to just express themselves, their feelings, rely more on their hearts, just release and free their imaginations. In the past, you didn't have the freedom to express yourself. And by the way, naturally, if you want to depend on imagination and feelings, naturally, you will break the rules. Because sometimes the rules would limit your imagination, right? When I tell you, for example, write me a Shakespearean sonnet about a particular experience, you will find yourself tied up. But here, the experience, the feelings are more important, so you break the rules in order to fit your feelings. And nature was the source of inspiration. Those people hated the city very much. Some people consider Romantic poetry to be anti-city literature. Can you guess why? They hated the city. They just, remember Marvel? He didn't like the city. Similarly, they hated the city. But in principle, Marvel was getting old and tired of politics, so he said, okay, I want to go to the countryside and enjoy my life because the society is corrupt. When we speak about, yes, please.
Because countryside symbolizes love, nature.
Yeah, also purity,
Yes,
innocence.
Symbolizes trading, maybe money, and
Money, corruption. But more than this, we have the Industrial Revolution attracted a lot of people from the countryside and the villages to work in factories. So many people thought, okay, if I go to the city, to London, to work in the town and the cities, in the factories, I will be rich. I will make a lot of money and I'll be rich. I'll improve my life. So people were, in a way, moving in masses. But they ended up being slaves to capitalism, to factories. And the factories were polluting everything. London was one of the most polluted cities in the world. There was corruption, there was poverty, there was death, there was disease. Only very few people, the owners, the rich people were getting richer, but the poor were still getting poorer. The ordinary people would only take the bare minimum just to keep themselves alive so that they can work. And this destroyed the relationships in the society. It depersonalized human beings. You are no longer a human being. You are no longer a name, a person with a story, with feelings and emotions. You are part of the machine. And that's why they said, okay, nature is our mother. Let's go back to our innocence and purity. And this is, by the way, criticized by many people. If there's a problem in your society, you escape. Do you escape? Do you escape? What do you do? If there are a lot of problems in your society,
We should face them.
you either face them or you just,
Deal with them.
yeah, like you deal with them or you run away. Now the romantics, many of them were like, okay, let's go back to nature. That's why some people call them escapists. You know, escape, when you escape, oh, sorry, I escaped. When you escape here, it's just you don't want to deal with the problems at all. So they are escapists, many of them. They just want to leave the trouble behind. But I don't think this is accurate, because poetry itself is change. Poetry itself is a revolution. When you change individuals and people's ways of life and thinking, I think you can do a lot to real life. So the city was a source of corruption and vices and sins. Another feature, childhood is a source of innocence and inspiration. In the past, remember all the texts we read before this was about all people, adults. Children were nowhere to be seen, because they were supposed to be controlled, to be educated, to be regulated. But for the Romantics, actually William Wordsworth says, the child is the father of man. The child is the father of man. That's a paradox, right? Why? Is the child the father of man in real life? In real life, no, literally. But how can, metaphorically speaking, the child be the father of man, please?
What we deal with now in childhood just defines us as others.
Whoa, this is an amazing idea. So our childhood influences the way we grow up, defines us as we grow up. Whoa, that is an amazing idea. But what else? Can we learn from the kids?
Yes.
Do we learn from the babies? Do we change? I know a friend of mine was telling me some time ago that he only really started appreciating his parents when he had kids. He then realized that because kids teach us to be selfless, to give, to love, to care, to work hard in many ways. So childhood was significant and a source of inspiration. So this is basically the major features. We'll come to them again and again, especially when we talk about individual poets. Any question before we move to William Blake? Everything is new. Different type of language, subject matters, structures, poetic forms, inspirations, feelings, hearts, childhood, nature. Any question? Okay. The first Romantic poet is William Blake. Many people describe William Blake as a pre-Romantic, because he was writing poetry this way before even William Wordsworth and Samuel Coleridge. Now, William Blake, he was born in London and he lived in London, and this we'll see the difference between him and the other poets who went to the countryside to live in the village, among natural elements. Two things to focus here, or to focus on. Number one, he has a particular individual view of the world. And this individuality is actually a Romantic feature. It's no longer collective. You know the collective idea of we must praise the God. Every individual is free to do whatever he or she wants to do, as long as you're following your pure and innocent nature, your purity, your original pure status. And in his poetry, we'll see, for example, how this influences his styles and ideas and sensibilities. Everything he writes, in a way, contrasts with the order and control of the Augustans. Again, this is a Romantic, even it's a Romantic feature. You can say Romantic feature contrasts the order and control of the Augustans. Who are the Augustans? Remember? like Dryden, like Samuel Johnson, Alexander Pope, the neoclassicists or neoclassicists. Another feature we'll see in a bit for William Blake is symbolism. He uses a lot of symbolism. What is a symbol? Yeah, in English, how would you define it? When you use something to refer to something else, to inspire a particular idea of something else. Like how a rose inspires, symbolizes what? Love, childhood, nature. Now, some of his symbols are clear to understand, easy to understand, we'll see in a bit, but some of his symbols are really very personal and not easy to understand. It doesn't mean like we can't understand it. It means we can't agree what it means. We'll see this in a bit. He published 2 collections. The first one is called Songs of Innocence. Songs of Innocence. Even the name suggests purity and innocence. And the other one is Songs of Experience. Experience doesn't necessarily mean like when you work and have a job and work for 2, 3, 5 years and then you have a lot of experience. Here it means the opposite of innocence. It's like corruption in a way. So most of his poems, you will have the poem and its contrast. A state of innocence when you are pure, when you are good, when you are a child. But for him, innocence is not necessarily for children. But most children are almost always innocent. You can grow up keeping and protecting this state of innocence and you are still innocent. But some people will be corrupted by life, by society, by the city. And he exposes this in the Songs of Experience. Songs of Experience. Let's see the examples here. So this is taking us back to the symbolism issue. So generally 2 types of symbols for William Blake. What are they? Number 1, simple direct symbols. Simple and direct. Like you can see where he's going. Like for example, he uses the lamb. You know the little lamb? The lamb? Silent B here. Lamb, silent B. The lamb, the little sheep. What does it symbolize? Innocence, purity, simple life, simplicity, right? But what if the poem is tiger? It's going to be more. It's about more than simplicity and innocence. It's about complexity. It's about experience. It's about power. Thank you. It's about mystery. Thank you. And some of his symbols, especially in his late poems, are really, again, I don't want to say complex or difficult to understand, but they don't easily reveal what they indicate, in the sense that you could read a poem and we could have end up with 10 interpretations. So what does the symbol refer to? It's not clear. It refers to many things. It's very personal. He uses symbols for the first time that no one else has used them before. 2 examples here for symbolism. Number 1, from the lamb, how it symbolizes innocence. In Christianity, it symbolizes Christ. You know, Jesus Christ is usually like the shepherd, and the people are like the lambs. Little lamb. Look at the poetry. Are there difficult words here? Are there difficult? That's like poetry for the kids, but it's also for us, because it addresses this state of innocence. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Who created you? Oh, little lamb. Notice the repetition of thee. We have never seen a repetition of the same word in the previous poetry. Because I think I'm not sure about English. In Arabic, when you have a poem, you can't repeat the same word at the end of the line unless you count like 7 lines. So if you say, كم تشتكي وتقول إنك معدم والأرض ملكك والسماء والأنجم, you can't repeat the word أنجم until you go like for 7 more lines. And if it shows up again, it's okay. But before that, it's a sign of weakness. In English, definitely there's something similar here. But here, it's just a couplet with the same word. And this is why how a romantic poet doesn't care much about the sophistication of the rules, as long as this conveys the message. And yes, this could be a poem for kids, but it is about simplicity of life. This is the lamb. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Even the language, even the tone, the atmosphere, very poetic and very innocent. However, when he talks about the tiger as a symbol of experience, can someone read, please?
Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy
fearful symmetry. Someone else, thank you. And please.
Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy
Not immoral, immortal. Thy fearful, thy meaning your fearful symmetry. Can you think of a better tone or atmosphere than this? Because if you're saying tiger, tiger, it's like saying little lamb, who made thee? But this is a tiger here. Can you give it a try, please? Yeah, go on.
Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?
Symmetry. Very good. So I think it's more like this. Tiger. Look at the old writing here. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Even the word fearful here is part of the tone. The ta-ta, burning, tiger, tiger, burning bright. And even the burning bright. Ta-ta. There is alliteration. Thank you for seeing this. So he creates the atmosphere of the whole poem changes, shifts from innocence of the lamb to the seriousness, the darkness, the complexity, the experience of the tiger. If you count the syllables, can we count the syllables together? Tiger, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So 7 syllables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 syllables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Interesting. 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Symmetry. Symmetry.
2, 3. No.
Symmetry 2 or 3? 3. Symmetry. Vowel, vowel, vowel. You can take out this as a schwa. You can like remove the schwa like and say it symmetry. But it's still going to do the same thing. So this is 8. Look at the rhyme scheme. A. I think it's BB. But it is imperfect. Symmetry is 3. Even if you say symmetry, there is something the poet is doing. Listen, in poetry, in literature in general, in poetry in particular, the poet usually hides, indicates a message or an idea where he or she creates something called tension. You know, tension, something that doesn't fit, something that is different, something that doesn't follow the norm, the pattern, the rules. Listen, here we have 7, 7, 8. Why? Why did he shift from 7, 7, 8? And we have A perfect rhyme and then A, B imperfect rhyme. So we raise a question here. Why is the poet doing this? What is he doing? Can someone tell? Can you guess? Why is he adding an extra syllable? And why is there an imperfect rhyme here? There is always a reason.
Maybe this is kind of suspense for the audience.
Okay, interesting. Suspense, like, oh, what's going on? Why is this extra here? Maybe we can't count the extra syllable as we read, but we definitely can feel the imperfect rhyme. I, symmetry. Yes, more? Why? The question is again, why is there an extra syllable and an imperfect rhyme here, Shayma?
Following the rules.
Very good, very interesting answer. He's not following the rules, simply. But he doesn't break the rules because he wants to break the rules. He wants to indicate something. He wants to tell us something. What is he tell us? That's my question, in a way or another.
Maybe the tiger can be purple symmetry.
Can, how?
He's
What does the tiger symbolize, in your opinion?
power.
Power.
Yes.
What else?
And maybe
Nature.
the tiger,
The dark side of nature. What else?
forest.
The forest, like tiger, tiger. Seriously, look, when you go home today, Google image pictures of tigers and look at them. They're really fascinating. Beautiful creatures, how everything is like a perfect painting. And indeed, when you look at it, it's perfect. And it's fearful. It creates this, whoa, whoa. So, in my opinion, the tiger could symbolize the Industrial Revolution, or the machines, or the factories, or the city itself. The city sounds, when you look at the city from afar, maybe you hate a particular city. What you are in a plane and you look down, they all sound majestic, magisterial, and beautiful. Why would the poet do this? The irony, I'm not sure if you paid attention to this. The irony is the word symmetry. What's symmetry? What does it mean in Arabic?
Balance.
Balance, like perfect, something perfect. And the word symmetry itself is not symmetrical. The word symmetry breaks the symmetry of the poetry. And that's in a way ironic. How does it break the symmetry? By the extra syllable and by the imperfect rhyme. In my opinion, I think the idea I have in mind is that the poet is saying that this is, if this symbolizes life or the Industrial Revolution, it looks perfect, but in reality, there is something missing. There is a problem here. There is something lacking here. This is the facade. This is just the appearance, but the essence and the reality, they are lacking. There is something missing here. How does he do it? By playing on the rules, playing on the number of syllables and the number, the perfect rhyme, the imperfect rhyme here. One more example from our friend William Blake. We actually have this one and another one. So let's see quickly. This is a poem. Sorry, I didn't add this. I was in a rush. The inverted commas. Never forget the inverted commas for the text. The Sick Rose. Look at the title of the poem. It's again, and it's a very short poem. This is the whole poem. It's no longer 1,000 lines, 200 lines. It's no longer, right, about Adam and Eve and Samson agonist and the Paradise Lost. A sick rose. Can someone read here?
Yes.
Please.
O rose, thou art sick, the invisible word that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy dread of crimson joy, and his dark secret love does thy life destroy.
Okay. What's going on here? Do you think there are many difficult words here?
No. I think one word.
Which one? Crimson?
Yes.
It's a color. Crimson, like red or pink or something like red. I think other than this, if you don't know what howling is, and listen, think of yourself as a native speaker. Even if you are 13 or 14, you will be able to know the word crimson and storm and howling. So, oh rose, there's a personification here. Thou means you, art here. Oh rose, thou art sick. The invisible worm. So who are the people, who are the characters in this text? Number one, rose or the rose, because here he says the sick rose. Here he says rose. And then there is A worm. And this worm is? Invisible. And secrecy, darkness, generally not positive. The invisible worm that flies, night, darkness, in the storm, in the howling storm.
The sound of the heart.
Howling storm. Yeah, the sound is there. Has found out thy bed. Thy, the rose's bed, your bed of crimson joy. And his refers to his, the rose seemingly female. The worm, yes. So the worm, the rose is personified as a sick human being. And also the worm, the worm is personified as a woman or a man? A man. His love. Love is good, right? But this is not only secret, but also dark. It's like a horrible person in secrecy, at night, in the storm, in the howling storm, invisibly trying to take advantage of the rose, making it sick. And his dark, secret love does thy life, your life, destroy. That's the poem. What is it about? What does the rose stand for? Can you guess? Okay, could be about how life was destroyed by the Industrial Revolution, by the city, the corruption.
The worm symbolizes the Industrial Revolution.
Could be. So life was good, was pure, innocent, until capitalism and the Industrial Revolution. Yes?
Maybe the rose symbolizes like how women were controlled by you.
Thank you very much. This could be a symbol of women. It could, by the way, it could be a particular woman. He knows.
Yes.
Or all women destroyed. What could be about childhood, children? How children are destroyed by life, by parents, by corruption. Or it could be about a simple rose. It could be about nature. One of your friends in the other group was saying that this could also be about women nowadays, today. I said, how? I said, there are many people on Facebook, many guys, many dudes who just go on Facebook and try to stalk particular girls and tell her, deceive her, or trick her, oh, I like you, I love you, or something, and then they destroy her life, and then they just disappear. I was like, interesting. I'm sure William Blake did not mean this, but as readers here, we can see this idea in this poem. In my opinion, this poem is about everything you said. And it's about the power of imagination. Remember when we read Alexander Pope? The poem was about one thing. Satire. Remember? We had one meaning, one idea, one interpretation. Don't feel sad for this if a poem has several interpretations. Because as a reader or in your exam, you only need to pick one idea. If you tell me in your exam that I think this symbolizes nature and you explain it, it's okay, it's correct. I think this symbolizes childhood and loss of innocence. Yeah, show me how in the text. Okay? But look at this poem and how beautiful and how simple in its language. The features are there. Simplicity, subject matter, nature, imagination. The symbolism, I don't think this is complex. There are more complex than this. But yeah, there is symbolism here. This is William Blake. Individual.
The worm is the incubation, the Israel incubation.
Thank you. Yeah. As Palestinians here, we could take this as how colonizers and imperialists, how occupiers come, take everything good and destroy our lives. Pretend to be good, in love, that like, we care about you. Thank you. Could be many things. Okay, in 1 minute before I stop here, can we see the rhyme scheme? Sick, worm, B, C. I think this is B, but still not perfect because this is storm, this is worm. Has found thy secret bed of crimson joy. C, destroy, B. So one imperfect, and the imperfect works with the worm because the worm is the imperfect that destroys this perfection of the whole thing. disrupts it in a way. If you count the, you're not required to do this, but it's really cool if you start counting the feet, how many feet we have, and the syllables, because in my opinion there is something here. So if you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4,
6.
and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See? He doesn't have to follow. Is this poetry? This is beautiful poetry. But many people will say, no, this is not poetry. It's not following the rules. You have to go for 10 syllables or 8 syllables, so you have 4 feet or 8 feet, in a way or another. I think if Alexander Pope or Samuel Johnson or Dryden were alive, they would be pulling their hair. They would be acting angry like they reacted to John Donne. I wanted to have time for this poem, but we can do it next class. Blake's London. Thank you very much. And please, if you have any question, do ask.